I'm Sarah Mitchell, 28. And 3 weeks ago I was about to close on my first home, after saving $425,000 over 9 years. I worked double shifts at Starbucks while studying, lived in a studio apartment the size of a walk-in closet, and ate ramen noodles for dinner more nights than I care to count. Then I discovered my parents had drained my entire savings account. When I confronted them, my mother looked me straight in the eye and said, "Honey, we're just securing Madison's Ivy League future. You'll thank us later." I couldn't help but laugh out loud. If you're wondering why, stick around because this story gets wild. Drop a comment letting me know what state you're watching from, and smash that like button if you believe in fighting for your financial independence. Growing up in suburban Phoenix, Arizona, with Linda and David Mitchell felt like living in a Pinterest board. Everything looked perfect from the outside. My mom was a real estate agent who treated our family like her most important listing, always staging us for success. Dad worked as a certified financial planner, managing portfolios for wealthy retirees in Scottsdale. Money talks, but wealth whispers, he'd say, while micromanaging every dollar that came into our house. Nothing was ever truly mine, not my bedroom dicker, not my extracurricular choices, not even my college major. "We're investing in your future," Mom would say while systematically crushing any attempt I made at independence. The golden child in our family was my younger sister Madison, 3 years my junior. While I had to ask permission to hang out with friends, Madison could disappear for entire weekends without question. When she crashed Dad's BMW at 16, they bought her a brand new Jeep Wrangler and threw her a learning experience party. Meanwhile, I got grounded for 2 weeks when I came home past curfew because of a traffic jam on the I-10. "Madison's more social," Mom would explain. "She needs different boundaries than you do." The favoritism was so obvious that even our neighbors started commenting on it. Maybe that's what drove me to become financially independent so early. At 17, I got my first job at a local Starbucks, hiding my tips in an old shoebox under my bed. By 19, I'd saved enough to move out and start community college while working full-time. My parents were livid. "You're throwing away everything we've built for you," Dad warned. The statistics show that kids who move out before 22 have a 73% higher chance of financial failure. But I was determined to prove him wrong. I transferred to Arizona State University on academic scholarship, majoring in cybersecurity, a field I chose specifically because it was recession-proof and paid well. My savings strategy was military precise. I followed the 50/30/20 rule religiously, 50% for needs, 30% for wants, and 20% straight into my high-yield savings account. I drove a 2008 Honda Civic, bought groceries with coupons, and turned thrift shopping into an art form. Every tax refund, every birthday check from grandparents, every side hustle payment went directly into savings. I tracked everything in a detailed spreadsheet, calculating exactly when I'd hit my goal of $450,000 for a 20% down payment on a house, plus a 6-month emergency fund. My relationship with my parents stayed cordial but distant during those years. Sunday dinners at their house, holiday visits, the occasional phone call where I'd deflect their questions about my finances with vague answers like, "I'm doing fine," or "Everything's on track." When I met Alex at a cybersecurity conference 2 years ago, my world expanded in ways I hadn't expected. He was brilliant, ambitious, and understood my drive without making me feel guilty about it. After dating for 8 months, we moved in together, splitting expenses and accelerating both our savings goals. It was Alex who suggested we start house hunting 6 months ago, even though I was still $25,000 short of my target. "The Phoenix market is insane right now," he pointed out logically. "Interest rates are still decent, and waiting another year might price us out completely." We spent weekends touring open houses in Tempe and Gilbert, gradually narrowing down our must-haves: 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a home office for both of us, and a backyard big enough for the dog we planned to adopt. When we found the perfect Spanish-style home in a quiet Gilbert neighborhood for $415,000, I knew immediately it was the one. "Look at this kitchen," Alex said during our second walkthrough, running his hand along the granite countertops. "And the master bedroom has that walk-in closet you wanted." For the first time in my life, I could picture a future that felt completely mine, a place where no one could control my choices or question my decisions. A foundation for building the American dream on my own terms. My parents, predictably, were less enthusiastic about my home buying plans. Real estate is overvalued right now. Dad insisted during our monthly check-in call. You're better off staying liquid and investing in index funds. The market always corrects itself. Mom chimed in with her own concerns. Why tie yourself down with a mortgage at your age? You should be focusing on experiences, not payments. Their pushback was expected, so I stopped sharing details about specific houses or our timeline for making an offer. Which is why I was confused when, during our next family dinner, Mom casually mentioned how much she loved Spanish style architecture and granite countertops. I hadn't told them about the granite. How did you know about that? I asked, my fork pausing mid-bite. Mom looked momentarily flustered. You must have mentioned it last time we talked. I knew I hadn't, but I let it slide, thinking maybe Alex had said something. Looking back, that should have been my first red flag that something wasn't right. The first concrete warning sign came 4 days later, when my phone buzzed with a notification I didn't recognize. Account accessed from new device. Wells Fargo mobile banking. I frowned at the alert, since I hadn't used my banking app that day. I immediately logged in through my browser and checked my recent activity. Everything appeared normal, no unauthorized transactions, balance looked correct. Still, the notification bothered me enough to call Wells Fargo's customer service line. We show a login from a new IP address at 3:22 p.m. today. The representative confirmed after verifying my identity. The location appears to be within Arizona. Would you like us to freeze your account and issue new credentials? Since nothing seemed to be missing, and my transaction history looked normal, I opted for just changing my password, figuring maybe I'd logged in from Alex's laptop and forgotten. But a nagging feeling of unease lingered. 3 days later, it happened again, another email about a successful login from an unrecognized device. This time I called Wells Fargo immediately, speaking with a fraud specialist named Jennifer. Ms. Mitchell. I'm seeing multiple access attempts on your account over the past week. She explained after pulling up my records. Several appear to be from devices not registered to your profile. Are you missing any funds? I asked, my heart starting to race. Has anyone made transfers without my permission? I don't see any unauthorized transactions yet. Jennifer replied. But there have been several inquiries about wire transfer procedures and daily limits. I'd recommend placing a fraud alert on your account immediately. I agreed to the fraud alert and set up additional security measures, including verbal confirmation requirements for any transfers over $500. Jennifer also suggested I run security scans on all my devices to check for malware. That evening, I did exactly that, starting with my phone and laptop. Everything seemed normal until I ran a deep scan on my personal computer, the one I'd owned for 2 years and used primarily for managing finances and work projects. The scan revealed a program running in the background that I didn't recognize, something that wasn't listed in my regular applications. After some research and a call to my tech-savvy coworker, I discovered it was sophisticated monitoring software that could capture keystrokes, take screenshots, and essentially spy on everything I did on my computer. My blood ran cold as I tried to figure out when this software had been installed. Then I remembered, about 5 months ago, my laptop had been running slow, and during a visit to my parents' house, Dad had offered to optimize it for me. I do this for my clients all the time, he'd said, taking my computer to his home office for several hours. I'll clean up the registry and remove any bloatware. He'd returned it later that evening, running like new. I'd thanked him profusely, never suspecting he'd used the opportunity to install spyware. The realization hit me like a freight train. My parents had potentially been monitoring my online activity for months. They would have seen my banking sessions, my house hunting searches, every email about mortgage pre-approval, even private conversations with Alex about our future plans. With trembling hands, I logged into my main savings account using Alex's tablet, bypassing my infected computer entirely. The screen loaded, and where there should have been $425,000, the result of 9 years of discipline, sacrifice, and relentless saving, there was nothing. 0. I frantically clicked through my transaction history and found a wire transfer completed just hours earlier. sending my entire life savings to an account registered under David Mitchell, my father. The room started spinning as Alex rushed over, alarmed by the strangled sound that escaped my throat. "Sarah, what's wrong?" he asked, gripping my shoulders as I stared at the empty account in disbelief. "It's gone," I whispered. "Everything. 9 years of saving, our house, our future, they took it all." Alex grabbed the tablet, quickly scanning the transfer details. "This has to be a mistake," he said firmly. "We'll call the bank right now and report fraud. They can reverse wire transfers if we act fast enough." But as I looked more closely at the receiving account information, a sick realization washed over me. The account holder wasn't some random scammer, it was my own father. "It's not fraud," I said quietly, my voice hollow. "It's my parents." I tried calling them immediately, but both phones went straight to voicemail. Text messages showed as delivered but went unread. I even sent emails to their work addresses with the subject line, "Urgent, call me immediately," but received no response. After a sleepless night pacing our apartment, I'd left 8 voicemails and sent countless messages. The silence was deafening, and in that silence, my shock crystallized into something harder, more determined. "I'm driving over there," I told Alex as I grabbed my car keys the next morning. "I'm coming with you?" he replied, already reaching for his jacket. "No," I shook my head. "I need to handle this alone first. But stay by your phone in case I need backup." The 45-minute drive to my parents' Scottsdale neighborhood gave me time to cycle through possible explanations, each more unlikely than the last. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Perhaps they were trying to protect my money somehow. Could they have moved it to a better investment as some misguided surprise? But the spyware on my computer told a different story. This was calculated, deliberate, a betrayal so profound I could barely process it. Their gated community looked exactly as I remembered, perfectly manicured lawns, imported palm trees, and I approved beige color schemes stretching as far as the eye could see. I parked behind Dad's Tesla Model S in their circular driveway and sat for a moment, gathering my courage. Then I walked up their stone pathway and rang the doorbell, even though I still had a key somewhere at home. Mom answered, her expression shifting from surprise to something carefully neutral when she saw me. "Sarah," she said, stepping aside to let me in. "This is unexpected. We usually stick to Sunday dinners. Is Dad home?" I asked, not bothering with small talk. "In his office," she replied. "Is everything okay?" I didn't answer. Just walked past her toward Dad's home office. He looked up from his computer as I entered, removing his reading glasses with a smile. "Sarah," he said pleasantly, "what brings you by on a Wednesday?" I closed the door behind me, suddenly aware of how calm I felt. Beyond anger, beyond shock, something clear and crystalline had formed in my chest. "I know what you did," I said simply. Dad's expression didn't change. "You'll need to be more specific." $425,000 transferred yesterday from my savings account to yours. Plus the monitoring software you installed when you fixed my laptop. A flicker of something crossed his face, not quite guilt, but perhaps surprise that I'd discovered everything so quickly. Then his expression settled into firm resolve. "Sit down, Sarah," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his mahogany desk. The same chair where I'd received countless lectures as a child. I remained standing. "Where is my money?" Mom entered then, closing the door softly behind her. "David," she said quietly, "she knows." "Of course she knows," he replied. "Sooner than we anticipated, but it doesn't change the fundamentals." He turned back to me with the same patronizing tone I remembered from childhood. "The money is secure," he said, as if that explained everything. "We made a strategic family decision about its optimal deployment." "A family decision," I repeated incredulous. "You made a decision about my money that I saved for 9 years without even consulting me. That's not family strategy, that's theft." "Don't be dramatic," Mom interjected, her voice sharp. "We're your parents. We've always known what's best for you, even when you can't see the bigger picture yourself." "I'm 28 years old," I shot back. "I have a successful career in cybersecurity, a stable relationship, and until yesterday, I had a plan to buy my first home. You had absolutely no right to interfere." Dad stood up, his 6'2" frame still imposing even though I was an adult. "We had every right," he said firmly. "You were about to make a catastrophic financial mistake, tying up all your liquid capital in an overpriced asset in a bubble market. We protected your financial future, he continued, by reallocating family resources, where they'll generate the highest ROI. Madison has been accepted to Harvard Business School, and she has a revolutionary social media startup idea that needs seed funding. Her MBA and business venture will benefit this family's wealth for generations. As if summoned by our raised voices, the front door opened and closed, and moments later Madison appeared in the office doorway, looking confused to find us all there. "What's going on?" she asked, glancing between us nervously. "Nothing that concerns you," Mom said quickly. "Actually," I said, turning to face my sister, "they just stole my entire life savings to fund your Harvard MBA and startup idea. $425,000 that I've been saving since I was 19 to buy my first house. Apparently, your future is more important than mine." Madison's eyes widened in shock. "What? That can't be true," she said, looking at our parents. "Please tell me that's not what happened." Dad's jaw tightened. "Sarah is being selfish as usual. We made a decision that maximizes value for the family unit as a whole. By stealing her money?" Madison asked, horrified. "It's not stealing when it's strategic resource allocation for your children's benefit," Mom insisted. "Sarah was about to waste that money on a house she doesn't need at her age. Your potential is unlimited. You're going places she never could." Madison looked disgusted. "I never asked for this. I would never want her money taken from me. I can get student loans like everyone else." Dad waved his hand dismissively. "You'll understand the wisdom of this decision when you're running a Fortune 500 company. Sometimes parents have to make difficult choices for the greater good." He turned back to me with a smug expression. "Honey, we're just securing Madison's Ivy League future. You'll thank us later." And then, to everyone's surprise, including my own, I started laughing. Not a polite chuckle, but full-bodied laughter that doubled me over. My parents exchanged worried glances as I struggled to catch my breath. "Sarah," Mom said cautiously, "are you having some kind of breakdown?" I straightened up, wiping tears from my eyes. Still grinning. "I'm having the opposite of a breakdown. I'm having a breakthrough, because you didn't get what you think you got." Dad's confident expression faltered. "What are you talking about?" $425,000 was my total savings," I explained, still smiling. "But after those weird login notifications last week, I got paranoid and moved $385,000 to a completely separate account at Chase Bank. One that you had no access to and didn't know existed. The Wells Fargo account you emptied only had $40,000 in it." The color drained from Dad's face. "That's impossible. We monitored your primary account for months. You never made any large transfers." "No, I didn't," I agreed. "Because I went to the bank in person and had them handle the transfer with no digital footprint whatsoever. I was going to surprise Alex with the news that we could make a higher offer on the house with extra money for renovations." I continued. "Thanks to your spyware, I got suspicious enough to protect most of my savings before you could steal it." Mom sank into Dad's leather desk chair. "You're lying," she said weakly. "Call Chase Bank if you don't believe me," I replied, "though I doubt you want to draw more attention to what you've done." Madison moved to stand beside me. "Whatever they took from you, I don't want any part of it," she said firmly. "I'll help you get every penny back." Dad's shock quickly morphed into anger. "You ungrateful daughters. After everything we've sacrificed for you, what you've done," I said, my voice steady and cold, "is commit wire fraud and computer crimes. You installed spyware on my personal device, without consent. You used that illegally obtained information to access my bank account without authorization. And you transferred funds that belonged to me. That's not parenting, that's federal crime. You wouldn't press charges against your own parents," Mom said, but I could hear the uncertainty creeping into her voice. "Watch me," I replied. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. "You have 24 hours to return my $40,000 to my account. After that, I'm going to the FBI with evidence of everything you've done." As Madison and I walked out together, leaving our parents stunned in Dad's office, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying for my entire adult life. My 24-hour deadline came and went with no money returned and no communication from my parents. True to my word, I filed a complaint with the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center and contacted the Phoenix Police Department's Financial Crimes unit the following morning. Detective Maria Gonzalez took my statement, her expression growing more serious as I explained the situation. Unfortunately, we see more of these family financial exploitation cases than people realize, she told me. But your parents' methods were particularly sophisticated. The spyware installation puts this into federal cybercrime territory. She explained that they would investigate, but also recommended I consult with an attorney specializing in financial crimes and cyber law. Criminal charges are one avenue, she said, but a civil lawsuit might be your fastest path to recovering those funds. Through a referral from my company's legal department, I found Marcus Rodriguez, an attorney who specialized in cybercrime and financial fraud cases. His downtown Phoenix office was modern and professional, and he listened intently as I walked him through my story. First priority, he said when I finished. We file for an emergency restraining order to freeze any accounts where your money might be sitting. Then we proceed with both civil claims for full restitution plus damages, and will coordinate with law enforcement on the criminal investigation. Marcus moved fast. Within 3 days, a judge had granted our request to freeze my parents' accounts pending investigation. Our formal complaint included charges of wire fraud, computer fraud and abuse, invasion of privacy, and conversion of funds. My parents' response was swift and expensive. They retained Harrison and Associates, one of the most prestigious white-collar defense firms in Arizona. Their formal response was a masterpiece of deflection and victim-blaming, claiming they had acted out of parental duty and financial expertise. Even more shocking was their countersuit, alleging that I had been financially irresponsible throughout my 20s, and that they had repeatedly lent me money with verbal agreements for repayment. They claimed the $40,000 was simply collection of accumulated family debt. This is completely fabricated, I told Marcus when he showed me their filing. I've been financially independent since I was 19. I've never borrowed a dime from them as an adult. I believe you, he assured me. But we need to build an airtight case to counter their narrative. The case quickly attracted local media attention. Channel 12 News ran a segment about digital privacy and financial abuse without naming us directly, but the details were clearly about our situation. My inbox filled with messages from friends, colleagues, and even strangers, some supportive, others critical of my decision to take legal action against family. The most painful criticism came from my dad's sister, Aunt Patricia, who had always been like a second mother to me growing up. Family issues should stay in the family, she wrote in a long Facebook message. Your parents might have made a mistake, but dragging them through the courts will destroy any chance of reconciliation. Is winning really worth losing your family forever? What Aunt Patricia couldn't understand was that I wasn't trying to win. I was trying to establish that actions have consequences, even when they come from family. For the first time in my life, I wanted my parents to face real accountability, instead of being allowed to rewrite history to justify their behavior. Alex proved to be my rock throughout this entire ordeal. He took time off work to come with me to legal meetings, helped organize our growing mountain of evidence, and held me during the nights when the stress and hurt finally caught up with me. You're doing the right thing, he would whisper as I cried against his shoulder. Standing up for yourself doesn't make you a bad daughter. They violated your trust in the most fundamental way possible. Madison also surprised me with her unwavering support. Despite pressure from our parents and extended family, she provided a detailed written statement confirming she had never requested or wanted my money, and describing the pattern of favoritism and control she had witnessed throughout our childhood. I've always felt guilty about how differently they treated us, she confessed during a strategy meeting with Marcus. But I never imagined they'd go this far. I'm sorry I didn't speak up for you sooner, Sarah. Her testimony would prove crucial in establishing the pattern of parental manipulation and financial control. The most difficult part of the legal process was the deposition, where I had to sit across from my parents and their high-powered attorney while answering questions for hours. They looked smaller somehow, Mom's usually perfect appearance showing stress fractures, Dad's confident demeanor noticeably diminished. Their attorney, Janet Harrison, repeatedly tried to paint me as ungrateful, financially naive, and vindictive toward my loving parents who had only tried to help. Isn't it true? She asked, peering over her designer glasses. That your parents, both successful financial professionals, repeatedly advised you against purchasing real estate at your age, demonstrating superior financial wisdom that you chose to ignore. They expressed their opinions. I replied carefully, as Marcus had coached me. But having opinions doesn't give them the right to access my bank accounts without permission or install spyware on my computer. And isn't it true that your sister's Harvard MBA and startup represent a far better long-term investment than an overpriced house in a bubble market? Marcus objected before I could answer. Objection assumes facts not in evidence. The funds in question were the sole property of my client, earned through her employment and systematically saved over 9 years. There was no family investment pool to allocate. As the weeks stretched into months, the emotional and financial toll of the legal battle intensified. The house Alex and I had fallen in love with sold to another buyer. My parents began spreading rumors among family friends that I was having mental health issues and had fabricated the entire story for attention. There were moments when settling seemed tempting, just to end the ongoing nightmare. But every time I considered backing down, I remembered Dad's smug expression as he said, "You'll thank us later." As if my 9 years of hard work and sacrifice meant nothing. As if my dreams and goals were just obstacles to their preferred vision of family success, so we pressed forward. Marcus assembled a team of digital forensics experts who testified about the sophisticated nature of the spyware and traced its installation to the exact time frame when Dad had possession of my laptop. Bank records clearly demonstrated my consistent saving pattern over 9 years, completely contradicting my parents' claims about family debt. The case was scheduled for trial, with a court date set for exactly 4 months after my initial discovery of the theft. Despite my parents' multiple attempts to delay, the judge denied their motions, citing the straightforward nature of the evidence and the seriousness of the allegations. 3 days before our trial date, Marcus received an unexpected call from Harrison and Associates. My parents wanted to discuss settlement terms. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, with worn wooden benches and fluorescent lighting that seemed harsh for such a momentous occasion. I sat beside Marcus at the plaintiff's table, my spine straight despite the knot of tension in my shoulders. Across the aisle, my parents sat with their legal team, neither making eye contact with me. Judge Robert Chen entered, and proceedings began with opening statements. Marcus went first, his voice clear and authoritative as he laid out the facts without emotional manipulation. "This case is fundamentally about violation," he concluded. "Violation of privacy through unauthorized surveillance software, violation of financial autonomy through illegal account access, and most tragically, violation of the sacred trust between parent and child for personal financial gain." Janet Harrison's opening painted a different picture, portraying my parents as experienced financial advisors who had tried to prevent their impulsive daughter from making a devastating mistake. "The Mitchells have over 4 decades of combined financial expertise," she argued smoothly. "They watched their daughter prepare to commit her entire life savings to real estate at the peak of a market bubble. Their actions, while perhaps overzealous, were motivated by parental protection and fiduciary responsibility, not criminal intent. When my turn came to testify, I walked to the witness stand on legs that felt simultaneously numb and shaky. After being sworn in, I looked out at the courtroom, meeting Alex's encouraging gaze from the gallery. "Ms. Mitchell," Marcus began gently, "please tell the court about your financial journey as an independent adult." I described my path to independence, the multiple jobs, the careful budgeting, the systematic saving, all meticulously documented in the financial records already submitted as evidence. I explained my dream of home ownership and the security it represented after a childhood of constant control. "When did you first suspect something was wrong with your account?" Marcus prompted. I detailed the suspicious notifications, the discovery of the spyware, and the devastating moment when I realized my life savings had vanished into my father's account. "Did you ever give your parents permission to access your financial accounts?" "Never." "Did you ever agree that your savings should fund your sister's education or business ventures?" "Absolutely not." "How has this incident affected you?" "Ms. Mitchell," I paused, choosing my words carefully. "Beyond the obvious financial impact, it shattered my fundamental sense of security. The two people who were supposed to protect me instead exploited my trust in the most intimate way possible. Monitoring my private communications, stealing what I'd worked nearly a decade to build. Janet Harrison's cross-examination was aggressive, as expected. She questioned my financial knowledge compared to my parents' expertise. Implied that my house-buying decision was emotionally driven rather than financially sound, and suggested that my parents had tried multiple times to discuss their concerns with me. No, I corrected firmly. They expressed general opinions about real estate markets. But at no point did they say, "We're considering taking your money for Madison's education instead." That conversation never happened, because they knew I would never agree. The digital forensics expert was next, methodically explaining how the spyware functioned, when it was installed, and the scope of surveillance it enabled. This software captures every keystroke, including passwords, she explained to the visibly disturbed judge. It takes screenshots every 30 seconds and uploads them to a remote server. It can activate the computer's microphone and camera without the user's knowledge. This isn't parental monitoring software. This is corporate-grade surveillance technology. My father shifted uncomfortably as she detailed the exact timestamp of the software installation, matching precisely with his repair of my laptop. Perhaps the most powerful testimony came from an unexpected source. The Wells Fargo branch manager who had helped me transfer most of my savings. Ms. Mitchell came to our branch specifically requesting help with securing her assets. He testified. She mentioned concerns about unusual account activity and asked us to handle a large transfer with no electronic notifications. It's rare, but not unprecedented when customers have security concerns. This testimony destroyed my parents' claim that I had fabricated the story about protecting most of my money before they accessed my account. But the real surprise was Madison's testimony. I expected her to simply confirm her written statement, but she went much further. My parents have treated Sarah and me completely differently our entire lives, she stated clearly. Sarah has always been held to impossible standards, while I've been given every advantage and opportunity with no questions asked. A murmur ran through the courtroom as she continued. When I learned about what they did with Sarah's money, supposedly for my benefit, I was horrified but not surprised. This fits a pattern of control and manipulation they've used against her since we were children. Then, voice steady and strong, she revealed something that stunned even me. After Sarah discovered the theft, our parents approached me with $60,000 immediately, saying it was my share of a family investment. When I refused and said I would testify for Sarah, they threatened to cut off my college funding entirely. Mom made a small sound from her seat, and Dad's face flushed deep red. "Madison, that's enough," he said sharply, earning a swift rebuke from Judge Chen about speaking out of turn. As the first day ended, Marcus looked cautiously optimistic. "The judge seems very troubled by the evidence," he whispered as we gathered our materials, especially the sophisticated spyware and Madison's testimony about the pattern of control. The second day brought an unexpected development. Before proceedings began, Janet Harrison requested a brief recess to confer with her clients. When court resumed 30 minutes later, she approached the bench. "Your Honor, my clients would like to propose a settlement agreement." The terms were straightforward: full return of the $40,000 plus $35,000 in damages to cover legal fees and emotional distress. In exchange, I would drop all claims and agree not to pursue criminal charges. Judge Chen turned to me. "Ms. Mitchell, are these terms acceptable to you?" I looked at my parents, really looked at them perhaps for the first time as an adult. Mom's perfect posture, Dad's confident facade, both now showing cracks under the pressure of public accountability. They had monitored my most private moments, violated my trust, stolen what wasn't theirs, all while believing they were entitled to control my adult life. "No, Your Honor," I said clearly. "Those terms are not acceptable." Janet Harrison looked stunned. Marcus leaned close, whispering urgently, "Sarah, this is a reasonable offer. We should seriously consider it." "I've spent my entire life being reasonable while they've been controlling," I replied quietly. "I want the court to decide." So the trial continued. Financial records from my parents' accounts revealed something I hadn't known. They were experiencing significant financial pressure themselves. Dad's financial planning practice had lost several major clients over the past year due to poor investment performance. Their mortgage was underwater after a poorly timed refinance to fund home renovations. Madison's Harvard tuition was beyond what they could comfortably afford without liquidating investments at a loss. They had taken my money, not just out of desire to control me or favor Madison, but out of desperation to maintain their lifestyle and meet financial obligations they could no longer handle. This didn't excuse their actions, but it provided context for their willingness to cross such fundamental boundaries. They were drowning financially and saw my savings as a life preserver, justifying the theft through decades of paternalistic control. In her closing argument, Marcus emphasized the calculated nature of my parents' actions. This was not a momentary lapse in judgment, she stated firmly. It was a deliberate, months-long campaign of surveillance and manipulation culminating in the theft of my clients' life savings. This court must send a clear message that family relationships do not exempt anyone from basic legal and ethical boundaries. Janet Harrison's closing was more subdued, focusing on my parents' previously clean record and their sincere belief that they were acting in the family's best interest. Judge Chen took 2 days to consider his ruling. When we returned to court, the tension was electric. In the case of Mitchell versus Mitchell, he began, his voice stern and authoritative. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. The defendant's actions constitute clear violations of federal computer fraud statutes, state conversion laws, and basic principles of financial autonomy. He ordered my parents to return the full $40,000, plus $75,000 in punitive damages, and granted a permanent restraining order barring them from any contact with my financial institutions or electronic devices. While this court acknowledges the unique relationship between parents and children, he added, looking directly at my parents, that relationship does not confer ownership or control over an adult child's assets or privacy. Ms. Mitchell has demonstrated exceptional financial responsibility and maturity. The paternalistic overreach demonstrated by the defendants is particularly troubling given the sophisticated technological methods employed. As a final point, he noted that he would be referring the case to the U.S. Attorney's Office for consideration of federal charges, though prosecution would be at their discretion. My parents sat motionless as the ruling was read, Dad's face ashen, Mom's eyes fixed on her hands. They had lost not just the case, but the carefully constructed narrative they built around their actions, their parenting philosophy, and their own financial competence. As we left the courthouse, Madison caught up with me on the steps. "Are you okay?" she asked, genuine concern in her voice. I considered the question seriously. "Not yet," I answered honestly. "But I will be." The weeks following the court ruling brought both practical victories and emotional challenges. My parents complied with the financial judgment immediately, likely hoping to minimize their exposure to federal prosecution. The U.S. attorney ultimately decided not to pursue criminal charges, citing my parents' clean prior record and the complete financial restitution already ordered. With the return of my $40,000, plus the additional $75,000 in damages, I now had significantly more than my original savings target. Alex and I resumed house hunting, though the Phoenix market had shifted during the months of legal proceedings. "What about this one?" Alex asked one Sunday morning. His laptop balanced on our kitchen counter as he scrolled through new listings. 4 bedrooms, updated kitchen. About 15 minutes further from downtown than we were looking before. The house was gorgeous, slightly larger than our original target, with a desert landscape backyard and mountain views. The price was well within our expanded budget. "It's perfect," I said, feeling that familiar flutter of excitement. "Let's see it today." 2 weeks later, our offer was accepted. As we signed the closing documents, I felt an almost surreal sense of accomplishment. Despite everything, the betrayal, the legal battle, the public scrutiny, I had achieved what I'd worked toward for nearly a decade. "Congratulations, homeowners," our realtor said with a flourish, handing us the keys. That night, Alex and I sat on the floor of our empty living room, sharing pizza and champagne by the light of a single lamp we'd brought from our apartment. "To new beginnings," Alex toasted, his glass touching mine, "and to hard lessons learned," I added quietly. The emotional aftermath was more complex than the practical aspects. I established firm boundaries with my parents. No unannounced visits to our new home, no discussions of my finances ever, and no advice about major life decisions unless specifically requested. Our interactions were limited to brief, civil exchanges at family gatherings, which I attended primarily to maintain my relationship with Madison. My sister had moved out of our parents' house shortly after the trial, sharing an apartment near ASU with 2 roommates. She was finishing her undergraduate degree in business, but with student loans and part-time work rather than parental funding. It's harder this way, she admitted when she came over to help us paint the guest bedroom. But it feels more honest. Like I'm building something that's actually mine. I understood completely. My parents made several attempts at reconciliation, each revealing how little they had actually learned. Mom sent an elaborate housewarming gift with a card reading, "We hope you can see now that everything worked out for the best." Dad called on my birthday with an investment opportunity he thought would be perfect for that settlement windfall. Each time, I politely but firmly reinforced my boundaries, refusing to be drawn into their narrative, that the entire episode had been an unfortunate misunderstanding with a happy ending. They still don't get it, I told my therapist, Dr. Jennifer Martinez, during one of our weekly sessions. I had started therapy shortly after the trial, recognizing that legal victory hadn't automatically healed the emotional wounds. They see the outcome, the house, the money, but they don't understand what they destroyed. Trust, once broken, is incredibly difficult to rebuild, Dr. Martinez agreed, especially when the violating party doesn't fully acknowledge the harm they caused. Your healing can't depend on their recognition or approval. That was perhaps the hardest lesson. Accepting that my parents might never truly understand or genuinely apologize for their actions. My choice was to either keep hoping for validation that might never come, or build my life and healing independent of their acknowledgement. I chose independence. Alex and I created our home together, filling it with furniture we loved, painting walls in colors that made us happy, and gradually transforming it into a sanctuary that felt entirely our own. The professional consequences of the case surprised me in a positive way. While I'd worried about potential career damage from the public legal proceedings, the opposite happened. My story resonated with many people, particularly young professionals navigating complex family financial dynamics. At a cybersecurity conference 6 months after the trial, I was approached by the CISO of a major tech company. "Your experience was unfortunately common," she told me over coffee. "The technical and legal aspects of your case, combined with your cybersecurity background, make you uniquely qualified to help others." She offered me a position leading their new personal cybersecurity division, focusing on protecting individuals from the kind of surveillance and financial exploitation I had experienced. The role came with a significant salary increase and the opportunity to transform my painful experience into protection for others. After careful consideration, I accepted, finding unexpected purpose in turning my trauma into advocacy. Alex's career was thriving too. His cybersecurity consulting firm had landed several Fortune 500 clients, and he was considering expanding to include personal security services. One warm desert evening, as we sat on our back patio watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple, Alex pulled out a small velvet box. "I've been waiting for the right moment," he said, his voice uncharacteristically nervous. Then I realized there might not be a perfect time, but this feels pretty close. Inside was a simple, elegant ring with a small diamond that caught the desert light. "I know we've talked about marriage abstractly," he continued, "but after everything we've been through this year, I'm more certain than ever that you're who I want to build a life with. Will you marry me?" The joy that flooded through me was pure and untainted by the shadows of the past year. "Yes," I said simply, letting him slide the ring onto my finger, before pulling him close for a kiss that tasted like promises and possibility. Madison was the first person I called with the news, and her genuine happiness reinforced how much our relationship had grown and healed. She had become not just my sister but my closest friend. Our bond rebuilt on healthier terms now that we were both free from our parents' manipulative dynamics. Our first holiday season in the new house approached with mixed emotions. The question of whether to include my parents in celebrations loomed large. "What do you want to do?" Alex asked as we discussed Thanksgiving plans. It's completely your choice. After much consideration, I decided to host a small gathering that included Madison and our closest friends, but not my parents. Instead, I sent them a brief but civil card wishing them well for the holiday. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, not yet, but it was a conscious choice not to let their actions continue dictating my emotional well-being. As Alex and I prepared our first Thanksgiving dinner in our new home, surrounded by chosen family, I realized that despite everything, perhaps because of everything, I had found my way to exactly where I belonged. 1 year after the court ruling, my life had transformed in ways both visible and invisible. Our house had become a true home with a xeriscaped garden and walls filled with artwork from local Phoenix artists. Alex and I had married in a small ceremony in our backyard, with Madison as my maid of honor and a handful of close friends as witnesses. My relationship with my parents remained limited but civil. We had established what Dr. Martinez called structured contact, clear boundaries and expectations for any interaction. Holiday gatherings were hosted at neutral locations, conversations kept to safe topics, and any attempts to offer financial advice or discuss the past were met with polite but firm redirection. I'm still working on forgiveness, I told Dr. Martinez during our now monthly sessions, not for their benefit, but for mine. Carrying anger takes energy I'd rather direct elsewhere. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or allowing the same patterns to continue, she reminded me. It can simply mean accepting what happened and choosing to move forward without letting it control your present. That perspective helped me navigate the complex emotions that occasionally still surfaced. There were moments when a casual comment or familiar gesture from Mom would trigger a flash of the old hurt and betrayal, but those moments became less frequent and less intense as I continued building a life defined by my choices rather than their actions. Madison had graduated summa cum laude and launched a modest but promising digital marketing agency, funded through a combination of small business loans and a startup accelerator program. She had made it a point to build her business completely independent of our parents' financial input, despite their repeated offers of investment capital. I'm following your example, she told me over dinner at our house one evening. Building something that's truly mine, with my own integrity intact. The most unexpected development had been my growing involvement in financial education and digital privacy advocacy. What began as a guest lecture at Phoenix Community College about identity protection had evolved into regular speaking engagements, and eventually a workshop series I developed called Digital Boundaries: Protecting Your Financial and Personal Privacy. The workshops combined practical cybersecurity skills with deeper discussions about establishing and maintaining boundaries, particularly in family financial dynamics. I partnered with local domestic violence organizations, recognizing that financial control and digital surveillance were often overlooked aspects of abusive relationships. Your story resonates because it's about more than money or technology, explained Maria, my co-facilitator at the Maricopa County Family Justice Center. It's about the fundamental right to independence, to build your own life on your own terms. Alex's consulting business had grown enough that he'd hired 3 employees and moved to a proper office space in Scottsdale. Together, we had created not just a home, but a foundation for meaningful work that extended our experience beyond our own story, transforming pain into purpose in ways I couldn't have imagined during those dark days after discovering my parents' betrayal. My understanding of family had evolved significantly. I'd learned that shared DNA offered no guarantees of healthy connection or mutual respect. The most meaningful relationships in my life were now built on choice, trust, and reciprocity rather than obligation or biological connection. Family is who sees you clearly and loves you anyway, Alex said one evening as we hosted a dinner party that included Madison, my closest work colleagues, and friends who had supported us through the legal battle and beyond. Looking around the table at these people who had chosen to show up for me, who had earned my trust and respected my boundaries, I knew he was absolutely right. This understanding didn't diminish the complexity of my feelings about my parents. I could acknowledge their role in shaping me, even some positive aspects of my upbringing, while still maintaining the boundaries necessary for my well-being. I could wish them well without giving them opportunities to harm me again. On the first anniversary of the court ruling, I received an unexpected email from Dad. Unlike his previous attempts at communication, which had been defensive or minimizing, this message seemed different from the opening line. "I've been doing some difficult soul searching," he wrote. "While I still believe our intentions were to protect the family's financial future, I've come to recognize that our methods were fundamentally wrong. The privacy violations and taking your money without consent were inexcusable breaches of trust, regardless of our motivations. I don't expect this acknowledgement to repair our relationship. But after a year of therapy and honest self-reflection, I felt it important to take full responsibility for my actions without justification or excuse." I read the message several times, sharing it with Alex and discussing it in my next therapy session. It wasn't a magical resolution or a Hollywood moment of tearful reconciliation, but it was perhaps the first genuine accountability my father had offered in my entire life. I responded briefly, thanking him for the acknowledgement without promising any change in our current boundaries. True repair, if it was ever possible, would require sustained behavioral change over time, not a single moment of insight. As I reflect on the journey from that devastating discovery to my life today, I'm struck by how a violation meant to control and diminish me instead catalyzed growth and independence beyond what I had previously imagined possible. The very qualities my parents tried to suppress, my determination, self-reliance, and refusal to accept their version of reality, ultimately protected me from the worst consequences of their actions. The most valuable lesson I've learned is that true security comes not from controlling others or being controlled, but from building a life aligned with your own values, surrounded by relationships based on mutual respect and genuine care. Freedom isn't just financial, though that's certainly part of it. It's the ability to define your own path and establish your own boundaries, even when, especially when, those closest to you resist. If my story resonates with you in any way, I hope it offers some validation or courage for your own journey toward independence. The path to establishing healthy boundaries isn't always straight or easy, particularly with family members who benefit from the status quo. But it's worth every difficult step, every uncomfortable conversation, and every moment of doubt. You deserve relationships built on respect, not control. You deserve to build the life you've worked for. Have you ever had to set challenging boundaries with family members? Share your experience in the comments below. This community is here to support each other. And if this story helped you feel less alone in your own struggles, please hit that like button. Subscribe for more content about financial independence and healthy relationships, and share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for being part of this community where we grow stronger together, one boundary at a time. Remember, your dreams are valid, your hard work matters, and you have the right to protect what you've built. The American dream isn't just about financial success, it's about the freedom to define success on your own terms. Until next time, keep building the life you deserve.